Right now in America, we have over 22 million workers who are making less than $15 an hour, and nearly 40 million people in our country earning less than $17 an hour. Shamefully, the federal minimum wage, despite the efforts of myself and other people here, have not been raised since 2009 and remains an unbelievable $7.25 an hour. Will you work with those of us who want to raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage to take millions of Americans out of poverty?
If you know anything about how the Republican Party operates when it comes to protecting the dignity of the millions of workers who keep our country running, you know exactly what Trump's Treasury Secretary and hedge fund manager Scott Bessent is going to say.
Senator, I believe that the minimum wage is more of a statewide and regional issue.
So you don't think we should change the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour?
No, sir.
Okay.
Just pause for a second and think about how out of touch you have to be to think that paying someone $7.25 an hour is acceptable while millions of Americans are struggling to get by making $10 to $15 an hour. A real living wage should be around $20 an hour. But who needs to improve the lives of the workers who generate profits from their labors when one percenters, like Bessent, are living just fine with how things are now?
The United States today has more income and wealth inequality than has ever existed in the history of our country. You got three people on top, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, and Mr. Zuckerberg, who are now worth almost $1 trillion. That is more than half of the bottom of our society, some 170 million people. Three people, more wealth than the bottom, 170 million. We have more concentration of ownership today than we have ever had. We have more concentration of ownership in the media, where a handful of billionaires like Musk, Bezos, Rupert Murdoch increasingly own the media and the information that the American people receive. We have a corrupt campaign finance system in which a small number of billionaires in both political parties make huge contributions into the presidential and congressional campaigns.
While hearing these statistics makes us incredibly concerned for the present and future of our country, and frankly, the entire world, the Republicans couldn't care less, because what we're seeing now is just the next logical step of their policy platform and ideology. Keep all of this in mind as we now turn to Georgia Representative Rich McCormick on CNN.
When you talk about school lunches, hey, I worked my way through high school. I don't know about you, but I worked since I was, before I was even 13 years old. I was picking berries in the field before we had child labor laws that precluded that. I was a paper boy. And when I was in high school, I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home instead of going to work at Burger King and McDonald's during the summer should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? I think we need to have a top-down review. Who can actually go and actually produce their own income? Who can actually go out there and do something that makes them have value and work skills for the future? I mean, how many people got their start in fast food restaurants when they were kids versus just giving a blanket rule that gives all kids lunches in high school who are capable of going out and actually getting a job and doing something that makes them have value, thinking about their future instead of thinking about how they're going to sponge out the government when they don't need to. We don't give people value. We don't give them the ability to dig themselves out when we penalize them for actually working and actually keep them on welfare. That's what's been the inner city problem for a very long time.
McCormick really let the mask slip there at the end with the welfare and inner city dog whistles, but we'd be lying if we'd say we were surprised. It's also important to note that the census data shows that McCormick's district, Georgia 7, has median and average household incomes of around $100,000 and $130,000 respectively, dwarfing the country's median household income of $80,000 as reported by the Census Bureau in 2024. Something tells us that the very real issues of childhood malnutrition and poverty haven't affected his district in the same ways as other communities across the country. You have to be a reprehensible and sick individual to legitimately argue against giving free lunches to school children. And there's just so much cognitive dissonance necessary to think you're actually doing the right thing in taking this issue on. It's just incredibly cruel. And I've said this before on this platform. There is so much compassion lacking with these people who are arguing things like this. No empathy for anybody who isn't like them. And don't forget, though, we warned you measures like this would gain popularity in Republican circles as the party became more emboldened than ever to force their beliefs onto the whole country.
Some people seem to think the government is the answer for everything, free food, free health care, free this, free that, free. But it's not free. These young kids need to be taught self-responsibility. And throughout high school, when I was working 12 months out of the year, my high school counselor came to me and said, Cherie, you're bored. You got enough credits. Graduate early. I graduated early out of high school, went to work full-time, working full-time while going to school. It is good for these kids. And you know what these kids of today are? Majority of them are lazy. They don't know what work ethic is, but they know how to play video games all night. They know how to join gangs. They know how to get into trouble. Get a job and be responsible.
This is how Missouri State Republican Sherry Tolson Reich argued for a bill that would roll back child labor laws in the state.
Folks, what the hell are Republicans doing? Are they trying to take us back to the early 1900s? The Republican governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, signed legislation into law that eliminated the age verification requirement for youth workers. Like, what are they doing? All this bill does is make it easier for young children to be employed in the workforce. Like, hey, for the Republicans out there, and especially her, I'm not sure if you knew this, but child labor is a bad thing. Like, this is now the Republican platform, putting children back into the workforce. It's insane.
We have killed 2,000 babies since abortion became legal. Those are 2,000 people in the state of Nebraska that could be working and filling some of those positions that we have vacancies. They're not here. Our state population has not grown except by those foreigners who have moved here or refugees who have been placed here. Why is that? It's because we've killed 200,000 people. These are people we've killed.
Ditto with Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders all the way back in 2023 and Nebraska Republican State Senator Steve Erdman. And almost a year ago to the date, AOC railed against these dystopian provisions for all to see.
Now, what we have here is that there are even some lawmakers in states like Wisconsin, Ohio, and Iowa that are proposing the loosening of child labor laws in their state because they have so many jobs that are left unfulfilled. We have seen teenagers dying in states like Wisconsin, Missouri, and Michigan because so many jobs are going unfilled, and many of these Republican legislatures would rather roll back child labor laws and put 11 and 13-year-olds back in the workplace than allow immigrants into their community and do what they've always done.
The reason why Republicans would advocate for policies like eliminating free school lunches, loosening child labor laws while simultaneously advocating against expanding the child tax credit, extending parental leave policies, lowering child care costs, etc., is because they want to exploit children. They want to take advantage of them, right? They want to push them into the workforce as soon as they can. If it's legal, then hey, they're like, well, it's a law. So children, no free lunches. You have to earn your money. You have to work to get your meals. And on top of that, we're going to make it harder for your parents to survive because we're not giving you any quote unquote handouts, right? Or any assistance to facilitate a more balanced and an easier life, right? To pay bills. No, oh, now it's on you, a child. You do not have the right for free lunches. And your parents don't have the right to get assistance to help pay bills when they welcome a child. It is so messed up. I find people who advocate for policies like that to be very deranged in the head, but that is where we are in America. And listen, I just hope that we're able to get through this and we can limit the amount of damage done while Trump is in office and the other Republicans have taken to his stance and his approach. It is truly frightening, but I do hope that we can limit the damage in America when he's in office. For Rebel HQ, I'm Chris Williamson. We'll see you next time.